are very important because it's new for everyone.
Right.
You know, regulators don't necessarily understand or may not know the full extent of why we need to write this AI liability risk, why we need to tap into these cyber risks, why we need regulation and oversight over certain different things that are very new, like AI, that are now being used to underwrite risks that then an insurance company could potentially be liable for.
Sure.
Understanding those chain of events, I think, is on us to help regulators understand, and also just the gravitas of how quickly we need to get this going, because we'll get into a position where, because the regulation is so far behind, and this extends beyond insurance, there's only so much companies can do, only so much we can innovate, and only so much that we can use some of these new tools and solutions to be better in our own spaces.
Welcome to 5 Minutes, your quick dive into the wide-ranging world of insurance, technology, and leadership. I'm Miguel Edwards, and I'll be your guide as we explore these topics that are transforming not just the insurance industry, but the business world at large. Along with sharing observations I've made over the span of my career in insurance, technology, and operations, I'll be chatting with some of the brightest minds in business and leadership. Whether you're a seasoned executive or a rising star, an industry expert, or just curious about how technology is revolutionizing insurance, this is your perfect spot for your weekly dose of insights. This is 5 Minutes.
Risha, thank you so much for joining us once again.
Of course.
2 years in a row, right?
Let's make it 10 years in a row.
Let's do it every single year. So, Risha, one of the things that we talked about for this year, the MGA space, it's not letting up. This is going to be, it is already, it's the future, right? It's the future of insurance. We've had some conversations around how powerful that construct is going to continue to grow. And so what I'd love to do is just dive into a little bit of some of the mechanics, especially from your perspective, the types of things that MGAs need to be thinking about in order to make themselves as attractive as possible to whether it's capacity providers, investors. You take that whatever angle you want to go in it. But if I am an MGA, let's say, and I've been in business now for a handful of years, a dozen years or so, and I'm looking to scale, and I need a more powerful partnership. What are some of the most important things I need to be thinking about from that perspective to get a bigger, better, more consistent, more reliable partnership?
So, difference with early stage versus growth stage.
Sure. Okay.
So, earlier stage, which is where I've had a lot of experience in, as well as later.
Right.
For earlier stage, it's always two things. It's always underwriting and distribution.
Okay.
They're almost the two golden tickets for any MGA, because you almost can't have one without the other.
Sure.
And if you are, the specialty person, that underwriter that has the niche expertise, that's fantastic. You have, proven record, you have customers, profiles, data, information that makes you uniquely qualified to do this business. Right. If you don't have distribution, that information is going nowhere.
Right.
And so I always tell, MJs and founders, if you can present to me or any capacity provider why your product is unique, why it's different, why it's niche, why we need you as an underwriter to do this, as well as what is your distribution strategy. Those are normally the two key things that every capacity provider wants to hear.
Sure.
Because, from policy admin, support, all these different bits and pieces, we have that. We write business, we meaning universal insurance companies write business all over the world at different scales. What makes you unique? What makes you win? And why do we want to be in this particular normally niche specialty segment, which is where MGAs shine? And so if you can show those two things and why you would win over maybe what we're already doing or not doing, those are very attractive things to capacity providers. Everything else we can do.
Right.
We can build it ourselves if we want to, but normally MGAs play a really nice conduit between an insurance company and different areas of the market that maybe we can't access or don't want to build ourselves. And so if you can tap into those things that we like to hear that make you stand out above all the other MGAs that we're seeing every single day, those are two of the biggest things that come to mind.
You mentioned, so you say underwriting and distribution. I guess underwriting is very intuitive to me. I get it, right? So there's a kind of a niche approach you have to a given risk. You've figured out some type of unique algorithm, underwriting algorithm, pricing algorithm that's giving you an edge. I get it. How does an MGA find a unique or a specialized mode of distribution? What does that look like?
Distribution means many different things. The space that we sit in is very digital forward, but for traditional MGAs, it doesn't necessarily have to be digital. It's just the way that businesses are moving.
Okay.
And what we're seeing now, what is winning, is very specialty, new evolving risks that maybe an incumbent or an insurance company doesn't necessarily have that secret sauce for yet.
Right.
So if you're able to bring something a bit different, that's definitely a game changer. We've already seen it in, climate risks, parametrics, cyber even, now AI liability. We're seeing it in different pockets where an MGA can actually come in and try and tackle that problem. And so I would say, it's not about what exists already today, it's what can you go out and find that's new, that needs attention. There is a gap in the market for so many different risks. And if you can tap into any one of those, I think that would make you stand out.
Is like embedded like an example of that? Like if I found a kind of a unique embed, because when I think about parametric, one of the things that come to mind a lot is this kind of like this embedded model.
Yeah.
Is that an angle that you guys look
Absolutely,
at?
yeah. Distribution, it could be whether it's traditional wholesale, retail, digital partnerships, embedded, just something that's a bit unique. We've seen it in a number of different MGA examples where they're tapping into markets in a way that maybe no one else has thought of to do before. Whether it's through certain segments, whether it's telecom, schools, government, all these different bits and pieces that maybe weren't, as easy to access before, but now because of technology, just greater awareness, greater access to data, like you said, automated underwriting, all these different bits and pieces have meant that markets that maybe weren't as open and available to us before are now. And an MGA can much more flexibly and innovatively tap into those markets than, say, a large incumbent that has to have 20 different things and, all of our peas in a pod before we can then enter a market. And MGA can be much more fluid with that.
Yeah. I want to kind of flip this thing completely over now for a second here, and let's assume that that the MGA is the market maker, if you will. The MGA is the one that is coveted. What do carriers have to think about to make themselves attractive to MGA partners or potential partners that really have they've got a strong opportunity?
Honestly, I love to hear when MGAs have the privilege and the opportunity to have lots of different options on the table, because that's quite rare. Normally MGAs are struggling to find their first paper or their first reinsurance partner. So that's a fantastic situation to be in, number one. And that normally means that you can then, as a founder, negotiate some of those terms. Think about not give away as much margin or make the economics slightly more favorable, especially as a brand new startup. I think insurance companies already are attractive. I don't know that we necessarily have to make ourselves more attractive. I think it's more about, if you look at it more than just a capacity partnership, it's more of a holistic partnership. So what else am I bringing to the table? And I think it isn't just us marketing that, whether we have an investment fund, whether we have assistance with marketing, whether we can help you with distribution and make the right introductions to the right, partnerships for you to grow as an MGA. A lot of that is table stakes. I think a lot of insurance companies have that already in some shape or form, whether it's an official program or not. And so those are already on the table. I think to go beyond that, I think both the founders and the insurance companies need to have a longer term vision. So it's a partnership in that we're not just giving you paper for a year. It's, we're giving you this paper for a year. In 3 years' time, I want to see it get this big. Then I can give you, more capacity, or we can then expand into a different. And so it's a very long-term vision type of partnership. And we've talked about this before, where MJs come into the industry, they want to be very disruptive, and I don't think they've necessarily been disruptive per se. It's more transformative. To your point of now together we're transforming the industry. It isn't them or us. As this is sort of what we've spoken to before of like one taking over the other. I don't think it's that. I think it's more, if we're able to make these partnerships work, this is the future, and this is what it could be. This is how big it could be. And I think if you go in with that mindset, it isn't so much like you look more attractive than that one. That's a better part. It's more about, where do you see that partnership being in 5-10 years from now? And I think that should be the mindset going in to make sure, increase your chances of success for both sides, not just one side or the other. So,
as you talk about that future and you start thinking about what these partnerships look like, one of the things that's kind of fascinating is I'm watching the regulatory landscape. Louisiana just passed a regulation requiring MGAs of that have over $500 million of premium to report all these really heavy reporting requirements, et cetera. What are you guys thinking about in terms of how that regulatory dynamic is going to shift, and how much responsibility remains with the carrier versus with the MGA? What does that look like for you guys in your thinking?
So I can't talk specifically to what our shows of regulators, but the general consensus is it doesn't change. Insurance companies have, since the beginning of time, had to work with local, state, federal regulators for a reason, especially if you think about surplus lines business and things like that. So regulation is still going to very much drive how much innovation we can do, how we're able to underwrite for some of these new products, how we're able to even sell products that tap into some of these new emerging risks that we mentioned. And so I think if we continue to work with them, and educate them on why these are very important, because it's new for everyone.
Right.
You know, regulators don't necessarily understand or may not know the full extent of why we need to write this AI liability risk, why we need to tap into these cyber risks, why we need regulation and oversight over certain different things that are very new, like AI and you know, LLMs and generative AI that are now being used to underwrite risks that then an insurance company could potentially be liable for.
Sure.
Understanding those chain of events, I think, is on us to help regulators understand, and also just the gravitas of how quickly we need to get this going, because we'll get into a position where, because the regulation is so far behind, and this extends beyond insurance, we're seeing this just in general, especially in the US, because it lags behind, there's only so much companies can do, only so much we can innovate, and only so much that we can use some of these new tools and solutions to be better in our own spaces.
Yeah.
And without that regulation, it's really tough to make those decisions. So even as a carrier looking for MGA partners or an MGA looking for carrier partners, both sides need to also include some due diligence around their AI capabilities. You might present to me as an MGA and you are using all these different tools and all these different solutions, but how do I know that they work?
Right.
How do I know this leads to better underwriting, better risk assessment if you don't have any data yet? So there's risks on both sides, and regulation helps mediate some of that, helps us feel more comfortable giving up balance sheet risk, giving up capacity and paper. And so I think we definitely need both. But working together has always been the consensus, and I don't think that's changing.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned this notion of kind of MGAs kind of looking for partnerships and partners looking for MGAs, et cetera. Do you think that the market is efficient as it could be? I mean, does it feel as if that matchmaking happens as efficiently as it possibly could?
Short answer, no.
Yeah. Okay.
Long answer, there's pockets.
Yeah.
The MGA market is just so fragmented already. Throw in, you know, brokers, reinsurance markets, fronting capacity providers, all these different players. And there are different times in the year and events throughout the year where some of that happens, but it's not very well organized in one shape or form.
Right.
So if someone could just come in and create a brand new event where that was very curated.
I love that.
With everyone, you know, in mind, as opposed to having to sift through thousands of opportunities throughout the year and figure out which one makes sense, or showing up to an event and having 105 meetings and leaving without any idea of who you met with. There needs to be maybe a middle ground of something a bit more curated, white glove, where you have the right people in the room, decision makers in the room, MJs that really know how to present and pitch and articulate. They're ready to just be in front of the right person and say the right thing to get decisions made quickly. That's the piece that takes a really long time, and some MGAs get frustrated with that. Even within a large company, it takes us a while to navigate who is the right person, and that could take a few weeks, that could take a few days, it could take a few months, and all of that leads to, like, you know, rough and ready relationships and bad experiences and, you know, bad taste left in your mouth almost. And I think we can get rid of some of that because it's not intentional. We all want to grow the business. We all want to write more business. We all want to underwrite better. It's very complex. So if someone has an idea of who could organize something like that,
something for us to think
give
about.
me a call.
That's something for us to think about. Let me just, I'll finish on this real quick here. I think about, you know, that complexity. Can you share just like kind of just roundabout thoughts around how many deals you typically would look at versus how many you actually action on? Because to me, again, it's like this kind of this, I guess it's this mystery for me in terms of how active that market is. I can imagine for MGAs, it's like, you know, I'm one out of how many that, you know, partners are looking at. What do those numbers look like?
Honestly, there aren't standard numbers.
Okay.
It depends what type of investor or partner you are.
Yeah.
You know,
So there's more opportunities in certain pockets than in other. Okay, I got it.
Absolutely, yes. There are concentrated spaces, but I would say if you are an MGA and you are looking for capacity for a certain thing, find out what these carrier and reinsurer partners are looking for first. Similarly with any consulting project, you go into the client, you ask them what their problems are, you ask them what they're trying to solve for, what are your biggest pain points, where do you want to grow, and then you come to with a proposal. I think having a similar mindset going into these conversations, yes, you have underwriting expertise, but, you know, you, insurance company A, are you looking to grow in this space? Is there something else that you're looking for? And I've had really great conversation with founders that find pockets that I mention and come up with solutions for those, whether it was the first thing they wanted to present to me or not. And that type of, you know, flexibility, commercial relationship, you know, that's a great start. And I'm not saying change your business model. I'm saying coming in and understanding that each investor, each capacity provider has different needs, different appetites, coming into the room ready to have those conversations and think a little bit outside of the box,
Yeah.
problem-solving attitude, normally those conversations go quite far.
Yeah, I love that. I lied. I just want to ask one last thing.
He said that 3 times.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just, I always do that because these other things. But so I would be remiss if I didn't ask you just in terms of, what are you thinking about just in terms of the future? Like, what do you have your eye on, and just going to be helpful for MGAs that are out there listening to this in terms of where they should be going next? What are you thinking about for the future?
There are lots of different areas that we'd love to grow in. We've
Yep.
had a very specific focus on like sort of smaller commercial business because, we flourish in the large middle market space. And
Right.
so some of these digital partnerships that we seek are tapping into business that's easy to automate, easy to write in a very streamlined manner. So across all commercial specialty lines, anything that can tap into those and do it slightly differently. We've built technology capabilities ourselves that make us an easier partner to work with because we can just plug through APIs. Not everyone has that.
Yeah.
And so these are all the pieces that we've been building over the last few years that make us, a first choice digital partner, as we call it. And so anyone that thinks that they can fit that bill, of course, we'll have a conversation.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Risha, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so
course.
much.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you keep coming back.
I hope you keep inviting me.
Oh, fantastic.
Thank you for joining this episode of 5 Minutes. If you've enjoyed our discussion, we'd love for you to share it with anyone else you think might find it interesting. Also, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening on and hit that bell to stay on top of the game with our practical 5-minute episodes. We look forward to seeing you again next week.